Hey, it's great to see you.
Well done.
Very nice.
I hurt. I hurt. All right, so instead of "can everyone hear me," I'm going to, mix some signal into the noise and say that for today's Camelot Unchained update, I have two hats. Hat A and Hat B. So the question for all of you is, which of these hats do I wear, and which hat does Ben wear?
Oh.
I see.
I see. Let's see.
Max gets to decide from
Max
a completely
gets to decide?
well, he's the one watching the chat.
Oh,
I think
so
they're
he
still
could just
friends,
decide
though.
and ignore the chat.
Well, what's great is now they're just yelling letters, but not associating them with a person.
What is that?
Yeah.
So,
So-
Fogalog says B is Ben's.
The shark hat.
Shark hat is Ben's. Shark on Ben. Ben Shark. Shark for Ben.
I see.
Ben must wear pink. Ben Shark. Shark Ben. Pink Andrew. Okay, the consensus definitely is Shark for Ben. Everyone wants to see Ben Shark and
Thanks.
pink hat Captain Andrew. Oh, nice. I like how has the eyes up there.
It's a profile.
That's
All right.
a great look.
I guess this has to happen. Oh, Captain, my pink captain. All right. So, how's CU going for you this week, Ben?
Well, a lot more seriously than these hats.
Uh.
There's been a lot of things going on this week with trying to get testing to work and having issues with various systems and trying to get everybody to actually review the documents that they get sent and having snow days and all kinds of just silliness. This has been a crazy week.
Yeah. So, let's do the top 10 then. So, number one thing. Testing. We've had a lot of people, thanks to all of you for jumping in and playing the game and giving us the feedback and telling us what was still broken. The highlights are we've been doing a lot of stuff with testing standalone cube in preparation for pushing in a new update. There was a lot of things that changed under the hood, and there's still a lot of things changing under the hood, so thanks to everyone who did building with cube on and also we've been testing out a new scenario type. There's a point capture map.
Yep.
That's been in testing with internal testers, and that's telling us useful things that we are going to fix and change before we roll it out to more people. But so thanks to everyone in IT for enduring the broken balance things, and I know everyone in alpha and beta is eager to get in there, but trust me, you'll play a better version without some of the things that we've learned. So, number 2, you want to take it?
Oh, sure. What are we doing? Tech NPC behavior. Okay, so this is back in the capture point scenario. We were able to get the NPCs to actually engage each other on the way to capture points. Previously, they had been just going to capture points and then deciding to fight things when they got there.
Yeah, they were like, I will run or I will attack, but I
Yeah.
cannot conceive in my little shark-eaten brain of doing two things at the same time.
Yeah, so now they're actually able to engage each other and engage players on the way to their objectives. So that has gotten fights to happen outside of just the capture points, which is much better for the scenario, and hopefully we'll get some further improvements to the way NPCs spawn and how many NPCs have spawned, and that'll balance out a little bit better when we get to get a few more features ready.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've sort of learned the hard way from that, it's not directly from that, but now that the NPCs are much more likely to just fire their attacks as they are on the move, like they'll just be running and they'll just pull out, start firing off arrows, and it's become very obvious that yes, there is one of the Arthurian archery attacks that is utterly OP, and we have learned, by having NPCs use all of these attacks in a lot more situations, that became super obvious. So that is on the list. We definitely know about it. We're gonna fix that. Ben's gonna fix that most likely.
I would like to know which ability that is. NPCs actually select from a far smaller pool of skills than players have, so they're only using a couple of them that are specifically for the NPCs.
So, yeah, I'll let you talk to Ash. Ash
Yeah,
has been
maybe
keeping
we'll
a
have to
spreadsheet.
ask Ash what skill that is.
So another thing, there had been problems with falling through the ground. Yeah, physics, always exciting. And Matt's been awesome, as Matt always is, and Matt has fixed the problems with falling through the ground. And he's also just been like on a tear through just quality of life. Hey, this feels wrong, I'll fix it. Hey, this feels wrong, I'll fix it. So Matt's been on kind of the leading tip of the spear in terms of fixing things super fast in response to tests. So thanks to Matt for doing that, and you know, helping all of us not fall through the ground to infinity. So
I get another one?
Yeah, you get them. We're taking turns,
what are we
man.
Okay, I see how this works. So tech resource harvesting. So Christina has gotten resource nodes working again. I'm not sure if those are now using the entity templates or if they're still just a one-off.
She's doing the migration now, so,
okay. So
that's ongoing.
Eventually, they're going to be using a newer system. We had resource nodes previously, but they were sort of a special, unique thing, and now they're being integrated into the entity template system, which is the system by which we set up capture points and spawn points and NPC spawners and all sorts of things that we place in the world. So this will unify that a bit. And yeah, so there's, what else has she got in here? Information about resource nodes can be queried through the API server. You can right click on resource nodes. There's a
It's
WI.
bothering me.
And some other stuff. So basically, this is just the beginning of getting crafting back into the game, and that's going to be something that we're going to put into a further scenario after this one that will actually focus on getting the rest of all crafting working.
Number 5, we now have the ability to make world space announcements.
That was very announcey. I like that.
So just any entity can make announcements into the world in response to, you know, kind of scripted type things, and that happens. And that's a key part of, you know, scenario advancement and things like that. So that's how that works, and that does work. So
people were very surprised by that.
I see.
Yeah, I'll take the next one because it's so nerdy.
Same thing, right?
Well, so World Space Announcements is announcing, like, to the players, like displaying announcements out in World Space in the game.
Okay.
So the post office and network messaging, which is number 6, is, I've talked about it on stream before, about just sort of taking, you know, basically giving any entity or script or anything in the game the ability to say, hey, broadcast out, hey, I would like to hear messages of this type, and then have whatever generates messages matching that filter route it to them, whether it's on the same server or another server. So, and that's kind of the core of the internal server side of building out more complicated campaigns, scenarios, etc. So that's some server plumbing that Caleb and Colin have been doing.
Okay.
Colin's mostly finished his part, which is the between server part, and Caleb's been doing the within a single server part, which is actually the hard part. Not to put down Colin's work, but you know, within a single server, you have to deal a whole lot with just, you know, all the threading and all the things that can be happening concurrently within a single machine. So
cool.
That's crazier and fancier.
What's going to be the actual implementation of that?
It's so it's the thing that you've been asking for. It's the thing where you can create a scenario or script or whatever that says, you know, I would like to respond to every time someone picks a blue flower or something like that, and just trigger anything on anything in a way that scales to MMO scale.
Sounds fun.
Including across servers. So, you know, you can have a scenario that's running in the central battleground that's tracking, you know, who's built the most buildings in their home islands. yeah, just as an example.
Yeah, we'll have to
It's
see
the
about
case of,
actually
like-
running scenarios across servers.
Yeah. Well, this is to make that possible.
Yeah. All right. What else do we have? We have number 7 is Art Characters 2.0. So John is mostly just working on some armor for these characters, I think. So he began work on medium armor update, and he finished the light armor. His work greatly improves the visual quality of the character message and materials. So, do you know anything about the techie side of
yeah.
that?
So, you know, we've got this has to do with how characters are packed into textures. With, you know, some of the, like, you know, you've got one texture that's just sort of unwrapped onto a character, and how space is allocated within there of, you know, more pixels for the face and fewer pixels for this, you know, someone's back. And but John's been taking a pass through that in response to, like, hey, you know, actually, as we look at decaling stuff, we need more pixels on the back so that the decal's not blurry, or, you know, all those kinds of things like that. So that's what John's been doing, of rebalancing all of the textures. You know, John's a machine. He does a lot of things. He's got several things on here this week.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Do you want me to do this one?
Yeah, you go ahead.
All right.
I took
so
that
this
one
is
up.
more art. So ability, SFX, and VFX. So DB has been working on hooking up sounds. He says he's got 99% of the missing sounds hooked up. The last few require some technical intervention. So Rob has been helping out. Same with Mike. Mike has been hooking up almost everything with visual effects again, and we just need some additional hook points, basically hooked up in tech, for those sounds and visual effects to actually play. So Rob is still doing a few bits here and there to make that all possible, and then we'll have all of the classes again having all of their skills, have all sounds and all visual effects again.
Yeah. So, and okay, part of why that's complicated is we are still very much, you know, even though we haven't exposed arbitrary skill building to everyone all the time, like, all the skills are still constructed out of parts, and so, like, the interface, it's between what skill you made and what art gets played isn't just one-to-one, because, you know, there's a plethora of different possible skills that can be made, and so that interface is complicated. You know, sort of having to procedurally calculate which art needs to be done based on, you know, tags within the skill and stuff like that, and that's why that's actually, like, a meaningful work item, because of skill crafting. So, also in the art, Dion's been creating a couple of extra plants this week. Tyler made some new terrain materials and integrated them into a terrain mod, which is, you know, kind of our word for mini biomes. And then he's making all sorts of new rocks, and Dion's been working on new castle rubble pieces.
Castle rubble pieces?
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
we're going to have
excited.
castles falling apart soon?
Yeah, well, there's also my thing. So
Yeah.
But, you know, why is it that all the environmental artists are so into plants?
I don't know. There's a lot of need of plants.
Yeah, the other day, like, Tyler was buying this new lighter on Amazon, and I was like, hey, Tyler, why are you buying a lighter? You don't smoke. And he said, no, that's right, I don't smoke cigarettes. So, yes, artists, what can you do? I'm sure he was lighting his barbecue grill.
That's also a possibility this time of year. Let's see, what else do we have? Number 10, work in progress art, Patcher and Battle Groups UI. So I haven't seen a lot on this, but I think we're sort of starting on the new patch notes UI. That'll, what does it say? James complete patch notes styling, and he's working on last week. And he has handed it off to JB. So JB hasn't been here in a couple of days. He's actually been out sick, but James always does some really nice art. If you've seen a lot of his 2D work for the UI bits.
I think this is mostly downstream of JB now, because it's, you know, JB, like, builds the back end, and then James builds the art, and then AJ uses the art to hook up the front end. So that's moving forward.
Yeah. So let's see. Then upgrade Battle Group UI. Patron model seeing has been approved and is currently being broken off for AJ to hook up. So yeah, AJ will be hooking up the Battle Groups UI, and hopefully just the Warband UI in general, though that isn't mentioned here. So hopefully we can get players back showing up in groups and having their group members' health bars on their screen again.
So, number 11 out of 10
Yes.
with Rice. 11 out of 10 with Rice. New ability animations. Scott and Joe have created a robust selection of pose sketches for our TDD Empath and Viking Stone Healer idols this week. We've begun to narrow them down to the best one to best personify the classes. I'm actually going to have to go look at this because I haven't seen them. So, then Joe's been doing new Stone Healer cast animations, and that we'll show off later in next week or something. And Sandra began work on the Forest Stalker special ability animations, which should be done today, testing in game. So those of you on IT, give Sandra a little more time to finish it out if she's not done yet, and jump in and start trying some Forest Stalker abilities.
Yeah,
to see,
I didn't know if that was gonna. I didn't realize that until looking at this on this
promises
list.
have been made.
Yeah,
Tyler has made promises.
I'm gonna have to actually hook that up, and if that's something we want to test today.
Yeah, we'll check. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 12 out of 10 art, VFX concept art. So Michelle has been doing some more work on the concept art for the different types of effects and the types of damage that different types of effects can do. So, it's pretty easy to say what does fire look like, but it's a bit harder to say like what does arcane damage look like, and what does void damage look like, and what does radiant damage look like. So she's been doing all the concepts for all of those, and there's a link that's not available in this paper here for watching her stream. She actually did stream some of that, so if you want to watch her draw some of these cool things, I think there's a link whenever we send this list out.
So, how about you?
Oh, you want me to do another one?
No, I'll do this one.
Okay.
I'll do the last two.
The last
I'm
two?
doing number 14.
Okay, I see.
Environment art. So a long time ago, Tyler created a second sketch of John of a tree asset, which is creepy, outstretched arm and hand. It's evil. Now I want to animate it. See what we've done.
Animated tree.
Yeah. He's anyway. So John actually. This past weekend, John came in and animated, or actually modeled it, and streamed that for all you guys. So you got to watch John make a scary tree.
I don't know. Can we support ambient animated models in the world?
Yes. ECTs will make that happen when they're fully realized.
Sounds like fun.
And that's archived if anyone wants to watch John make a scary tree. And lastly, I've been doing my ongoing quest for making buildings perform the way they need to be like seamless and fast and awesome at scale with lots of people and lots of battles going on. And this week turned interesting and exciting because I had to get involved with some other things that we can't talk about. But hopefully early next week we'll, just like go grab some massive thing that Necro or someone has done and, just have a scenario where everyone destroys it.
What does your scalability look like in like Black Count now?
Good.
Pretty good? Yeah, that sounds like fun.
So, yeah, that's our top 14 out of 10 for the week. It's been a busy and exciting week. It doesn't seem like Monday was only 4 days ago.
Well, we had snow, and that kind of messed us up a bit, so it's been a crazy...
I wrote a lot of code.
You wrote a lot of code in the snow?
No meeting equals much code.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, but unfortunately that means I've got more meetings today, so we're going to say 30-minute Q&A max, wrap this up by 4:45 instead of going all the way to 5. You can ask design questions and you can ask code questions.
You can ask art questions, but just realize you're going to get some interesting answers.
Does anyone have a whiteboard? Yeah, there's a whiteboard right there. I can I'll give you
programmer art for you.
Code questions.
Yeah, now I want like the ability to sit here with a tablet and MS Paint over the Twitch stream.
I I'm sure we could make that happen if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
All right, so give us your questions. Odilvik says, Tinnis asks, what happens if either an ally or enemy picks up a Wisp's lantern and enters the Veil? Will it require an empty hand slot, and would it drop if you enter combat?
You can actually do that in theory once we get... I mean, this is way farther down the road once we're, well into our various phases of beta, but the idea is that you will be able to take the lantern into the Veil with you, and then that character can actually transition into that state. But that's something that's way further on down the line, and like the lantern doesn't drop when you're in combat. You do need a free hand to hold it because it's a handheld item. But you can carry it around and fight while you're holding it, because that's sort of one of the things you need to be able to do.
Sakrix asks, how do you feel about friendly spell collision? Specifically, do you see the problems it could create with body formation play and friendly enemy collision? Will will melee attacks also suffer from same behind friendly?
Well, from design philosophy, having the idea that spells can crash into each other makes the game interesting, and that's sort of one of the things that we're designing skills around. Like, if you can put up like a defensive wall, of magic in front of yourself, and then things are going to crash into it or pass through it and change the types of effects that they're producing, that's one of the things that we're going to try to make the game more unique and make some different type of situations that you haven't typically seen in other MMOs. So I don't think it's a problem per se, but I do think that will add to the game in some interesting ways.
Yeah, I mean, like there is the potential to do grieving things, theoretically.
Well,
I'm
we're sort of trying to
though.
avoid that, right? So we're not having friendly damage. You can't just like damage your allies. There will be some situations where, you did something and then that led to somebody else being able to do something and that wasn't exactly optimal, but you won't be able to necessarily grief directly.
I mean,
as much as we can avoid it.
Like, I mean, I play a lot of Destiny, and, like one of the things that you can do, I mean, the Titans have this shield that, they can pop up and it'll block friendly shots. You're not really able to shoot through it in a useful way. So in theory that could be griefing, but in practice, everyone just knows how to work with it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I think that the main thing is probably we don't do anything that would snare or limit players. Like we get maybe something along the lines of, you can always walk through the magic wall to get a shot around it or something like that.
Yeah, like we do have friendly collision in combat, so as the question was also about melee, right? Like melee characters, you can swing through someone that's in front of you who's on your team to hit an enemy that's in front of them, but you can't walk through them and you can't stand inside of them. So there is a little bit of difficulty, I think, when you have to deal with large numbers of allies and trying to get everybody to be able to hit at the same time. But that's sort of just part of the game. And if you've played other MMOs that have had friendly collision in combat, like Warhammer, Age of Reckoning, it's not really that big of a problem, and it's more of a way that combat flows that's different than games that just have no friendly collision and people can actually stand inside of each other.
Janarian asks, what is your favorite thing you did this week?
Do you have a favorite thing you did this week?
Like almost everything I've done involves like rage and unhappiness at like what was there. Like I come from a place of negativity. I'm like, this sucks, so I'm gonna change it. And like when it's done, it feels triumphant. But
what was your best commit message this week?
Oh God. I'm gonna go with the Gibson one. Actually, no. It was a pleasure to burn. The opening lines from Fahrenheit 451. It was a pleasure to burn. It was a pleasure to see things changed and blackened.
There has been some destructive coding going on in the building system, I think.
Yeah.
My favorite thing, as generally is the case, is actually getting to do a playtest. So we actually got to do an office playtest. Everything worked. It didn't suffer from any, server problems or abilities not working or anything really horrendous. So, we discovered the issues that we were looking for, and were able to start tasking out some fixes for those, and hopefully that will lead to, a better playtest next week and the next week after that, and a continued round of revisions and updates to actually lead to alpha testers and beta testers getting to run through this scenario as well. So I think that went very well this week, and I'm looking forward to doing that hopefully again some more next week.
Lotaween asks, will the early part of beta include class balancing prior to the addition of the 4th and subsequent class trios, which will require rebalancing after each new class trio is added? Or will class balancing wait until all the classes that will be included for launch have been added for testing?
Well, class balancing is sort of an ongoing process. Early on, it's a lot more about getting things to work than getting things to be balanced. But there will be some balancing that goes on before beta even starts. There will be balancing that goes on during all the phases of beta, and there will be balancing that goes on after the game has launched. So I don't really have a targeted time of like the classes will be balanced at this point. It's sort of they will become more balanced as time goes on. Anytime we introduce a new trio of classes or a new individual class, like when we implement the crafter classes, there will be some times when things are a bit less balanced, and we have to sort of play catch up as that new thing goes into the game and has to reach a point of harmony with the old things. So it's just sort of an ongoing thing, and I don't want to necessarily say there's a specific time when balancing necessarily happens, but we've already done, make sure the numbers are sane and things aren't doing, 100,000 damage or whatever, or when you combine this and this together, it makes an ability that's just completely broken or makes the character, impossible to kill or whatever. But the numbers are still very, very rough. We haven't done, time to kill evaluations. We haven't done really any complicated builds of characters to say, well, this build versus that build, which one is more optimal? Is it better to go with damage over time effects or direct damage effects, or when you're fighting characters of this armor class versus that armor class, is the damage too much or too little? That's all stuff we're going to have to do, and that will be done closer to the start of beta. I will say that hopefully we'll get significant time to do that before, once we're in feature lockdown and just, doing things like number adjustments. We'll do quite a bit of that before beta starts, so that when we have our first day of our first beta test, hopefully things will be in a relatively good state as far as balance goes.
Strike asks, considering your fancy hats, is Naval Warfare now confirmed?
I've been saying almost since the Kickstarter that I would love to do like amphibious combat as our very first expansion, but let's draw a line through the feature set and ship the game, and then we can put ships in the game after that. But yeah, not in 1.0, but I would love it. I want longboats.
Drooged asks, is the code currently happy? Like happy enough to test?
We've been testing. Things, there are always bugs because there are always new features. We're not going to stop adding bugs until the day we stop adding features. But yeah, I would say that overall, modulo some specific balance and skill things, the point capture scenario went off decently well this week.
Yeah, we didn't have, server issues or proxy issues or anything that, took down the entire test. We still had some asserts and a couple of client crashes, I think, still to track down, but it's getting better. And keep in mind, this is on Hatchery, which is, the least stable build that we have. As we move that on to Fledgling and Wormling for subsequent tests, those will get a lot of stability fixes, and so the testing that will go on with alpha and beta testers later on will be much more stable and have a lot less issues than the tests that we do on Hatchery, where just things get broken on a daily basis.
Muerto Grease on the YouTube chat, I don't quite understand your question. Maybe you could reword it a little bit. Odelvik passes along a question from Bad Lunar Rising. Bad Lunar Rising asks, will islands have to come all the way together, edge to edge, or will some just come close, and as others are also drawn in, form a strait or inland sea?
That's an interesting question. So I would like to see them come edge to edge, but you know, you know, I would not expect that for beta 1.0 day one, but the tech has been built with that in mind eventually, so we shall see.
Dulos OG asks, sort of a progress question. I would like to know if stability at this point is working in such a way that you could, for example, make a very large chair without it falling apart under its own weight.
So building stability. Yes, it is currently working that way. You could take a chair and you could just blow up the same chair to 100 times the size of a chair, and forces would be distributed in approximately the same way. There's some point where it's going to break because, like, square cube scaling. So, like, you know, let's say you take a chair and it's, you know, like, the legs are 1 by 1 at the base and 5 high, and so you scale it up and you know, by 10 in every dimension, and so they're 10 by 10 at the base and 50 high. So what you've done is you have 100 times as many blocks on the base supporting the leg, but 1,000 times as many blocks in the leg. So weight-wise, there is a point where you magnify everything and, you know, it collapses. It's like, that's the reason that, you know, an ant has way skinnier legs in comparison to its body than an elephant does. I mean, it's a real thing, like square versus cube scaling. And all of that actually does work the way you would expect it to do in stability. Now, stability is not performing the way it needs to for thousands of people all attacking the same building at once, but that's why I'm currently, you know, that's a big area that we're currently working on. Also, stupid thing about square cube scaling. So, you know, drag is based on the cross section of something, but mass is based on the volume of something. So, like, if you take an animal and make it twice as big in every dimension, like, then its drag will go up by a factor of 4, but its weight will go up by a factor of 8, like you would expect. And so the ratio between your drag through the air and your weight determines what your terminal velocity is. So you can take, please don't do this, but if you take a small enough animal, you can drop it from any height, and the maximum speed it'll get up to will not be high enough to hurt it significantly. Like, so small mice, you can drop them off the Empire State Building, and they'll be okay. Elephants, not so much.
I see.
Physics, man.
For the great physics.
Now that we know that.
Please don't go dropping mice off tall buildings. Really, the mice, that's mean. But it works.
Necron asks, have you thought about any mini-game, companion app, etc., for a smartphone to keep connected to the game?
We're going to make a game about dropping mice off buildings.
Now
we are.
Yeah, I think the number one suggestion for a companion app is something that just, you know, says thank you for supporting CU and mines bitcoins on your phone until your battery dies. No, that's also mean.
That is also mean. Probably not as mean as the mice, but.
Real answer. Our game servers have always, by design, like, all the UI is just talking to the game servers through a standard REST API that's sort of well documented for the mod squad. So that is the plan for supporting companion apps you know, the back end is all there. It's a matter of doing the front end. We promised that during the Kickstarter. It will happen by the time the game launches, but I can't, or shortly thereafter. But yeah, that's always been in the cards from the beginning. I mean, there's, you know, we're using SignalR and WebSockets to push data to the in-game UI. We're, you know, there's REST calls that just return JSON to the in-game UI, and that's all there, and that's the back end. And you know, there's a pretty good chance we'll end up open sourcing any companion app, just like we already open sourced the in-game UI. So that might even be a potential for people to hack on it. So I don't have any specific announcements beyond what we've already announced, but yeah, companion app, yes. And also, of course, you know, we're using Discord, so, you know, there's a Discord app to chat with your game friends on Discord already.
Yeah.
Rodolphus asks, at Ben, I saw in the replay from last week that someone asked you about being able to tab target opponents. Can you elaborate whether there are specific design goals? For example, a heavy fighter from each realm can detect and target a heavy fighter of opposing realms at X meters, or are the specifics of detection range up in the air until beta tests?
Well, certainly I would say that before any system is implemented, there's a relatively high degree of uncertainty as to how the details of that system will eventually evolve. So it's very rare that you have a system designed on paper, written down, and then implemented, and then kept exactly the same way with no iteration. So just about anything that you're asking about where you say, like, hey, this thing that you've talked about, is it going to turn out that way eventually exactly as you said it? Probably not. In this case, there is a design for it, how you're supposed to have a vision stat compared to a concealment rating, and if you have camouflage, that increases your concealment, so it makes you be only seen at a closer distance to people. How that actually plays and how it works out is still something that we have to see once we get it into the game. So once that happens, there might be some additional features that we have to add, or there might be some changes to the way that those stats have to evaluate in order to really make it fun and perform the gameplay features that it's meant to. So we'll see how it works. There is obviously, like I said, that's the basic design of it, is there's vision versus concealment, but how exactly the details of that play out is something that we'll have to see once we get into the game.
A bunch of people want me to ask Sacrix's question.
Oh, no.
Can we expect defensive abilities on melee, guard, taunt, hold the line, defensive versus ranged, or similar type ability, however CU is going to do this for Beta 1?
Some of those for Beta 1, probably not all of them. And a lot of that is just because of technical features, right? I would really like to do hold the line or something similar to that, but has positional implications, and it has some features that our system currently can't do. So
let's talk after this.
Well, maybe we'll have to talk after this, but there are a lot of features that the game will eventually have that it's just not going to have for the start of Beta 1. So we'll see how that goes, but I do think that it's important for us to ensure that the classes fulfill their basic rules. So heavy fighters having, some good defense, being able to have some control so that they can peel off of allies, and to have whatever features we can give them as far as hold the line or guard or whatever to help protect their group mates. So I don't know at this point what new things we'll be getting as far as skill features. A lot of the feature development is mostly revolves around optimization and ensuring that characters will have all of the basic functionality that they need and all of the basic hookups for, like we were just talking about, sounds and visual effects all playing in all the proper parts and all the proper points and abilities. So actually getting new things that the system can't even do right now is on a lower priority than that. So we'll see how it goes. Beta is only 103 days away from now, and lockdown is before that. Yeah. So there's not a whole lot of time to get a bunch of new things in. But those are things that we eventually do want to have in. So it's just a question of when the scheduling is for that.
5-minute warning, folks. Right? 5-minute warning. Okay. Yozaro asks, will features such as NVIDIA Shadowplay work with CU? Would that require extra work from you to support?
A little bit of extra work. I'm going to defer that question to George on exactly how much work and when George will have time to get to it.
Odilvik asks, why do some of the stars in the sky seem to be a 3x3 grid? Are they light sources?
I have not actually noticed exactly what you're saying, so I'd have to see a screenshot. If you're talking about, you know, like the stars themselves are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 9 stars in just a very obvious grid pattern, then that is just a, you know, crappy random number generator, and we should probably reseed the random number generator. If the stars themselves look like they're a square, then you're seeing some weird texture filtering. And that, I mean, the way we... So I really hate the way some games render, like, all of their... just have, like, a single texture that is the sky with all the stars. I think that, you know, as you get into higher and higher resolutions and you get the stars smeared out from texture filtering, that just looks not awesome. So we make our stars actually small, so there's like a grid of tiny little tries up in the sky. And that's how we render our sky, but there might be some artifact of something there. I cannot say exactly, so...
Probably needs a screenshot?
Yeah, need a screenshot of what it looks like on your particular video card. And we'll send it to Dave. And say, hey Dave!
On the YouTube chat, Where to Grease asks, the artificial intelligence of Thief, the Dark Project, was rebuilt for the programmer Tom Leonard, spending 14 hours a day for 3 weeks. What was your main problem with the code?
So you just, is there an experience like that I've had? I'm going with how buildings diverged from the original implementation. We had a very, you know, I got the original building code in the game of just, you know, you can stack blocks and stuff, and I did that like over Thanksgiving from my parents' house while my mother was cooking the turkey. And you know, then there was a very, very junior programmer who took things from there, and then there was a more senior programmer who sort of built on that instead of, and perpetuated patterns. So I don't want to like necessarily blame him, because, you know, it was just in a weird place, and so he said, well, build on what's there. So I, you know, making buildings great again. Going to build the means to build a wall and make the Tuatha pay for it.
Odilvik asks, between now and launch, do you think frame rates will improve, decrease, or stay roughly the same?
Improve.
That was fast.
And maybe to close this out, we have an amazing one from John.
I'll append slightly to that. Okay. There will be more optimizations done. There will also be a lot more settings and checkboxes enabled and added. So, you know, not only will like the frame rate improve with what we are doing now, you'll have the ability to scale things up and down to your rig way better than you can now. So that's just an imperative. It'll happen.
All right, now CSE John asks, given your current headwear, if you were to magically become video game characters, what would your characters' names be? Gonna put you on the spot here.
Do either of you guys want to play with the tarantula while you're on the stream?
I feel like it definitely has to be some variant of Mario or Wario for me. You know, pick your. It's pink. Could it be Pario?
Is there a pink Mario
How about
character?
Pink Captain and Ben Shark?
Tennille Shark. Benil. The Captain and Benil.
I see.
It's happening.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, folks. I guess Andrew has to get to some meetings.
Yes. Thanks, y'all. I guess we will say it together. You want to say
I
it
like
together?
Shark Pope.
That's good.
John Milligan on the YouTube chat just suggested that.
All right, Ben. You want to say it? We will see you later.
Keep an eye out for our update, folks, and later this evening. And yeah, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.